Here's why I still love Team Fortress 2 20 years later. There are very few games that can survive 20 years. Not 20 years of being available to buy, but 20 years of people actively caring about it. 20 years of players logging in after work, 20 years of arguments, memories, friendships, updates, controversies, laughter, and stories. Most games are lucky to survive a few months. Even some of the biggest releases in history eventually become memories. COD 4, Modern Warfare 2, Halo 3, but not Team Fortress 2. Somehow, Team Fortress 2 became something different. It became timeless. And when I think about Team Fortress 2, I don't think about statistics, kill death ratios, or how many hours I've played, and it's a lot. I think about moments. I think about sitting in front of my Xbox 360 and discovering that multiplayer games could be more than just winning and losing. I think about moving over to PC and realizing the game was somehow even bigger than I had imagined. I think about the entire evenings disappearing without me even noticing, because every match felt different from the last. 20 years later, that's the thing that keeps me coming back. Team Fortress 2 never felt like a game I was grinding, it felt like a place I was visiting. And it's a place I can continue to visit. I can jump in and out whenever I want. But back in 2007, the shooter genre was heading in a very different direction. Military shooters were becoming increasingly serious. Brown and grey colour palettes dominated everything. Realism was the goal. The industry was obsessed with authenticity. Then Valve released Team Fortress 2, a game featuring a giant Russian man carrying a minigun, a crazed German doctor healing people with a futuristic beam gun, and a French spy who could disguise himself as anyone on the battlefield. Looking back, it sounds ridiculous at the time, but it was actually revolutionary. What Valve understood better than almost anyone else was that readability mattered. Every character silhouette told a story before they even fired a single shot. You could glance across the map and immediately know exactly what you were looking at. The heavy looked powerful, the scout looked fast, the sniper looked dangerous from distance. The engineer looked like somebody building something important. You didn't need pages of hero abilities or endless tutorials. The characters explain themselves through their design, and 20 years later, many modern shooters still haven't matched how elegantly Team Fortress 2 handled that challenge. My personal favourites are always going to be the heavy and the sniper, which probably says a lot about me as a player. Some days I wanted to be unstoppable, just absorbing bullets, standing between my team and certain defeat. Other days I wanted to convince myself I was capable of landing shots that had absolutely no right connecting. Heavy represented everything fun, about chaos. There is something deeply satisfying about hearing that minigun spin up and watching an enemy push suddenly collapse because they rounded the wrong corner. The sniper represented the opposite side of the experience. Patience, positioning, timing, and occasionally missing the very simplest of shots imaginable before somehow hitting the impossible 130 seconds later. Both classes felt rewarding in completely different ways. Both managed to create stories I still remember years later. What made Team Fortress 2 special wasn't that it was balanced perfectly, because it wasn't. It wasn't that every class was equal, they weren't. What made it special was that every class felt fun. That's an important distinction because modern games often chase balance so aggressively that they accidentally remove personality in the process. Team Fortress 2 was never afraid to let classes feel unique. The spy could completely humiliate an enemy team. The engineer could lock down entire sections of a map. The demo man could turn choke points into death traps. Every class felt like it was playing its own game, while somehow contributing to the same objective. The older I get and the more years that pass, The more I realized that Team Fortress 2 succeeded, but understood a simple truth that many modern games seem to have forgotten. Fun should always come first. Winning was exciting, but it wasn't the only reason people logged in. Some nights I spent hours and hours trying to win. Other nights I spent hours doing things that made absolutely no sense. Entire servers would suddenly decide that everyone was going heavy. Somebody would start a conga line, a spy would spend 20 minutes successfully pretending to be an enemy engineer. None of these moments appeared on a scoreboard, but they live with us, and none of them contributed towards some seasonal progression system or battle pass. Yet, they remain far more memorable than most, if not all, competitive matches I've played in the last decade. Part of that magic came from the era in which Team Fortress 2 existed. This was a time before modern matchmaking systems took over everything. Systems felt like communities. Rather than a temple lobby, you recognized names, you developed rivalries, you learned who the good players were, you knew which engineer always built the impossible sentry nests, and which spy could never be trusted. You weren't constantly being shuffled between anonymous groups of strangers. You became part of a community. Looking back, I think that's one of the biggest things we've lost in modern multiplayer gaming. I personally miss booting up the same server and just chilling. You knew who the regulars were, you knew who the newbies were. Every night was fun. And I think I speak for the majority of us out there when I say this, but some of or most of my favorite gaming memories weren't created by the game itself, but they were created by the people inside it. A close payload defense became memorable because of the teammates involved. A ridiculous comeback became legendary because of the reactions afterwards. Team Fortress 2 created an environment where players naturally generated stories, and they did it together. That's why people still talk about matches they played 15 years ago. They aren't remembering mechanics, they're remembering the experience. And then came what many people consider the golden years of Team Fortress 2. The updates arrived regularly, new maps appeared, new weapons, and the weapons changed how classes were played. The Meet the Team videos became events in their own right. Valve somehow managed to make update announcements feel like as exciting as a new game release. Every update felt like Christmas morning. The game wasn't just alive, it was thriving. Of course, it would be impossible to talk about Team Fortress 2 without mentioning hats. If you had told players in 2007 that virtual hats would become one of the most influential economies in gaming history, only a small number of the community would have believed you, and that's because they played RuneScape. Yet, somehow, what started as simple cosmetics evolved into an entire culture. Trading became its own game. Entire communities emerged around collecting rare items. Some players spent wartime trading and fighting. Looking back now, it seems absurd, yet it was also fascinating. Team Fortress 2 became one of the first games to prove that virtual items could have genuine value because players decided they mattered. But what really impresses me most is how naturally all of this happened. It never felt forced. Valve created a sandbox and a community filled it with life. That's something many developers have tried to replicate ever since, but very few have succeeded. Community isn't something you can manufacture. It grows organically when players genuinely feel they love spending time together and spending time on your game. And Team Fortress 2 had that quality in abundance. As the years passed, the gaming industry changed dramatically. Battle passes arrived, seasonal content became standard, retention metrics became boardroom buzzwords. Every major publisher seemed determined to find new ways of keeping players engaged. Somewhere along the way, engagement started replacing enjoyment as the primary objective. Games weren't simply trying to be fun anymore, they were trying to become habits. That's one of the reasons Team Fortress 2 feels so refreshing even today. When I launch it, I don't feel pressure. I don't feel like I'm behind on progression. I don't feel obligated to complete daily objectives before a timer expires. I simply play because I want to play. That sounds obvious, but in 2026, it's surprisingly rare. But Team Fortress 2 is not entirely perfect. Unfortunately, its story does have some negatives. There were difficult years. Updates become less frequent. Communication slowed. The community started asking questions nobody wanted to ask. Was Valve still interested in the game? Was Team Fortress 2 quietly being left behind? For the first time in the history, the future genuinely felt uncertain. The bot crisis only amplified those fears. Matches that once felt vibrant and unpredictable became increasingly frustrating. Players who had supported the game for years found themselves wondering whether anyone was listening. What made the situation so painful wasn't simply the existence of the problem. Every online game faces these challenges eventually. But it was the feeling that one of the gaming's greatest success stories might be fading away without receiving the attention it deserved. Yet, even during these difficult years, Team Fortress 2 and its incredible community refused to die. That resilience says more about the game and its community than any review score ever could. Most multiplayer games survive because developers support them. Team Fortress 2 survived because its players loved it. Server owners kept communities alive, content creators continued producing videos, artists continued creating artwork, fans continued discussing strategies, sharing memories, and actually introducing new players to the game. The community effectively carried Team Fortress 2 through these periods. That would have killed any other game. And I am going to put this out there. The bot situation in COD could learn a lot from Team Fortress 2. Whether you play Team Fortress 2 for hundreds of hours or thousands, chances are you remember something from Team Fortress 2. Maybe it was the first successful backstab you had. Maybe it was defending the final payload checkpoint with seconds remaining. Maybe it was a ridiculous heavy and medic push that somehow worked despite every logical reason it shouldn't have. Everybody seems to have a story. The reason those stories endure is because Team Fortress 2 was never obsessed with creating perfect, competitive experiences, and it had one of the best esports environments in history in its peak. But Team Fortress 2 was obsessed with creating memorable moments. Competitive integrity matters, but memories are what keep people playing and keep people talking about a game decades later. 20 years after launch, Team Fortress 2 still possesses more personality than any modern shooter released in the last 5, 10, 15 years. Every class feels iconic, every map feels recognizable, every sound effect is instantly identifiable. The game has a charm that cannot be manufactured because it emerged naturally from years of development, experimentation, and community passion. Maybe that's why I still love it. Not because it's perfect, not because it's modern, not because it's technically superior to everything that came after it. I love it because Team Fortress 2 reminds me why I fell in love with multiplayer gaming in the first place. It reminds me of a time when games prioritized fun over optimization. It reminds me of evenings spent laughing with strangers I'll never meet again. It reminds me that not every multiplayer experience needs to be a second job. Sometimes a game can simply be enjoyable. And 20 years later, Team Fortress 2 remains one of the purest examples of that philosophy. It survived industry trends, changing technology, shifting player expectations, controversial updates, periods of uncertainty and challenges that would have buried lesser games. For it all, the core experience remained intact, a collection of unforgettable characters fighting over a simple objective, creating stories that players would remember for years. The older I get, the more I appreciate that. Games come and go, trends come and go. Entire genres rise and fall, yet somehow Team Fortress 2 remains standing tall and welcoming new players, as well as returning players, but still creating memories for both, and still proving that fun never goes out of fashion. And that is why I still love this game after 20 years.